Hey guys, Ryu here with Naritude for Blender, and today I'm gonna show you how I would render this little bot. So first of all we need a floor, right? So I'm just gonna drop a floor, and always need to make sure that the floor is, with the feet. So gotta get as close as possible and make sure that it's not in or below, just right there, just below the bevel, yeah? And let's make it bigger. Something like this will do. Now I'm gonna drop some decals. I'm gonna be going full on add-ons on this one, so I'm just gonna show you how I would do it. Sorry about that, the screen is just, I'm recording in a smaller resolution that I usually work in, so decal machine doesn't really fit in here. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna probably grab some tiles, like this ones. I need something plain that it's not really too invasive, it's not too... it doesn't have too many patterns, so it's not distracting. Okay, so I'm just gonna drop it in here, and I'm gonna just copy it across. It's okay like that, and copy it this way and repeat it maybe twice. Select all of them and move them in here, and then hold Alt and apply them. And let me enable the screencast keys. So I can see that the decals are kind of synced in a little bit, so I'm going to adjust them with Shift just a little bit, do not go too high, because I'm gonna be rendering in cycles, and Eevee is quite forgiving in terms of the height of decals, but cycles actually is quite tough. If you go too high, you're actually gonna see that the planes of the decals float above the surface, and that doesn't look good. So I'm gonna grab a few more in here, and let's see, maybe something from here, this one, or maybe this one. This one is actually pretty cool. These decals, by the way, are from the pack I created, so you can grab them on Gumroad if you want. I'll leave the a link to them in video description, so if someone is interested. I'm just gonna copy them across and select all of them, double click and simply project. Now I'm gonna grab Alt M with hard ups and add some material. I'm going to have to reapply them to... If you double click on one decal, the same type is going to get selected, so it's really easy. Alright, so this would be, I think, about it. Let's lift them a little bit with Shift, just a tiny bit, and let's see how this looks in cycles. But before we do that, we need some kind of like a wall, a background. So I'm going to drop a circle and increase the number of verts to 100 and scale it to something, something bigger. So something like this. And well, let's talk about angles first, okay? Because before we do anything, we need to talk about angles. Also, I want to bring the HDRI and show you where the light is coming from and what kind of HDRI I'm actually using. Most of the time I'm using flat light, which means non-intrusive light, okay? So just overcast day, there's no harsh shadows. I just like this kind of lighting in my scenes. So let's go here and switch to Eevee. It's gonna be a bit faster. Blender is acting a bit slower because I'm using 16K HDRI. Light quality is a little bit better. I mean, it's much more well, it's much better than in a 4K, for example. So, okay, so light is coming somewhere from there, which is kind of cool, but I want actually light to come from there, so I need to rotate my HDR. So my camera is going to be somewhere here, right? So let's see, I'm going to rotate this. My shader editor is on the other screen, so let me just zoom out and let's rotate it, okay? And I want the light to come from here, so it could maybe 90 degrees or maybe even greater angle than to the camera, right? So I want a camera somewhere here, more or less. We can adjust this angle a bit later. So at the moment I want to put my camera on, right? So let's turn off this background because it's a bit confusing. So let's go to film and switch it off. And I'm gonna bring my camera in, okay? So I'm going to do it with machine tools, which will add camera to view. That's what I want. Now we need to decide on the angle, okay? I mean, focal length, which means, you know, what kind of compression of the lens we want. Now, if we, for example, go for something like 135, which is a telephoto lens, not a long one, but kind of decent compression on this lens. Let's go to, let's actually lock it to view. Let's zoom out. And now we need to, you know, let's think about it. So when you frame something, right, you need to look at a lot of things. Okay, so let's just go to end panel and view, and let's release this for a sec. You need to look at the whole form, okay? First of all, if the shape of this item that you are, you know, rendering looks good, does it look presentable? Is the you know, is the angle of the camera high enough? Okay, should it be lower? If you go lower, whatever you're photographing or rendering is gonna look more grandiose. That's why, for example, you're photographing guys with a little bit of an angle from, you know, from below, and girls rather from the top, so they're gonna look slimmer and so. Right? You see, this would look sort of smaller, right? And this looks way bigger, right? That's what angle does. So you know, you need to think, you know, what kind of feel you're going for. If you're gonna go frontal, you lose all the detail on the legs, right? I want this, you know, showing the side here. I want the legs because there's a lot of detail on it, put a lot of work into it, so I want to show it off. Besides, if you go on an angle, you can show a bit more of the whole, you know, whole structure, and it's kind of like a, well, with one render you can show a lot of your model, right? As opposed to, you know, going frontal. This angle could be also interesting. You see, you need to find an angle that actually, well, covers a lot of area. Also, if I was going, for example, dead on sideways, right, I'm not covering that much of an area, you know, I'm covering just a little bit. So if I put the model in the middle, I would need some data or text on both sides to make it balanced, okay? Otherwise, if I, for example, did this and put the text on left side, this right hand side would become completely irrelevant, okay? This negative space would be dead, you know, so I'll probably do something like this, right? So if, you know, I see a lot of renders, and these are just very basic mistakes. You know, someone is rendering in 16:9, so this size of the canvas here of this sensor, right, is 2560 and by 1440, so that's 16:9, okay? You know, that's a lot of horizontal space. You don't want to go like this, really, because look, this robot is looking this way, right? And this is just irrelevant, you know, this space here. What are you gonna do in here? Put a signature? It's just not enough, you know. It has to be something like this, okay? If you're going dead on frontal and symmetrical, this would be fine, right? But this just doesn't make any sense. In a movie, this would be okay because then the frame moves, but in a still image, just for me, that doesn't make any sense from the composition point of view, because this space becomes dull. Your eye is gonna go here, right? Because eyes enter the image from the left side. They're gonna go here, locked in this robot, and then piss off, and this just becomes completely irrelevant. You want the eyes to circle in the entire image. So if I put it in here and put some text here, this is gonna get locked, because it's gonna bounce from the text to the robot, to the legs, to the floor, which has a lot of, you know, a little bit of detail, not a lot, but it's gonna pull some attention and back, right? So I'm thinking on a, you know, it's multiple level thinking. Okay, it's like, where is gonna be my text? What kind of text do I want? Where is gonna be my signature? Is the floor busy? How I'm gonna edit it in Photoshop? Where I'm gonna add a lot of contrast? What I'm gonna do with it? What kind of background do I want? That's not a good question. So this kind of angle would be kind of cool, because I'm a little bit worried here about this part here, because you see this edge of the face of this, you know, the frontal piece, right? It's kind of equally bright than the leg. It's kind of sort of melting, you know, melding together with the leg. So there's not much of a separation here. What you could do, for example, you could cast a light from this side on the face to just get the rim showing, but we can get it separated in Photoshop with curves. Besides, this is a low res preview because we're looking at EV, not even in cycles. So this is going to be, you know, much more defined. So again, not just the camera view and angle, but you also have to think in terms of a rendering engine. Okay, you need to know what kind of result you're gonna get with this light, this angle, in this material, more or less. It just comes down to practice, but you know, these are the elements I am thinking about when I'm rendering. Okay, then I'm looking at the shadows. Like for example, this side on the right side is a bit dark. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drop another plane, and my light is coming from this side, correct? So if I'm going to make this plane larger, look what happens. My light's gonna get bounced back onto the robot. Okay, so now I can, you know, tilt it, so I can actually bounce the light from the bottom up, which is gonna be slightly unnatural. So I prefer something like this, or even straight. Okay, just like a wall. And you want to get it as close as possible to the camera edge, but without getting inside of the frame. And you want to give it some material, preferably non-metallic and rough. Okay, and you know, this one's gonna depend on how much light you want to bounce. You see the difference, how it bounces? So this will fill out the shadows. Okay, it's gonna kill the shadows a little bit on this side. It's gonna make it a little bit more balanced, because this side is very bright and this one is very dark, because there's only one light in this scene. But because we're adding a reflector, we're making this light, you know, much bigger. Okay, so that's how we are cheating a little bit here. All right, so light is sorted more or less. Where's the camera? Where did it go? Here. Okay, so let's see that. So now let's grab this circle, and we don't need the whole, you know, I want to put a wall, but I don't need the whole thing. Okay, the more you know, the more you enclose your image or your object with, you know, walls and stuff, the less light's gonna, you know, be coming into it. Okay, so you don't want to do that. So you just want things to be looking good in a camera, you know, in this rectangle, and that's it. What's outside doesn't matter. And I'm reframing everything for each shot. Now I want to go lower a little bit, so you know, so there's no gap. And now let's see. Now let's talk about this this floor, right? What you don't want, okay, let's say that this floor was a bit bigger. Okay, so I'm gonna scale it, right, like this. Okay, let me just move it up for a sec. Okay, so let's say this floor was a little bit bigger, right? So let's make it bigger, right? See, like this. Now let me give you an advice. Okay, never ever under any circumstance cut people or whatever the hell you're shooting at joints, because it will always look horrible. Okay, you do not want to cut things at joints, fingers, elbows, knees, ankles. It's a very bad idea, so do not do it, because it looks like shit. Okay, it looks like just someone got decapitated or something, or just had the limbs cut off. Okay, so you need to know how to cut. Like this one, for example, is sort of cuts these legs in the middle, and for me creates an optical discomfort. It's a matter of feeling that you will develop after years of working in this composition. But this is just, for me, this is discomfort, is uncomfortable. I need to get it a bit lower. Okay, this is perfect, because it gives this bot a base, but it doesn't encroach too far into the legs. Okay, and it's also makes it more powerful, because the floor is not overpowering the whole image. Okay, now I'm gonna grab this vert, and I'm going to bevel it so it's round. Okay, so it sort of doesn't angle over there, but sort of like, you know, circles around this this whole the back area. And now you see, now things look perfectly nice. Now I think this wall is a bit too bright, so I'm gonna give it a color. Actually, you know what, and I'm gonna grab it just a regular matte, and I'm going to drop a color on it just a little bit, not too much. You don't want to go too dark, because the robot is quite dark. Yeah? You want to go, you know, like, you want to give it some separation. Okay, some separation. And I'm gonna shade it smooth because reasons. And quite frankly, this needs to move a little bit. Quite frankly, I'm okay with it now. I think we are kind of alright to render. The floor is fine, the edge is fine, the colors are fine, and the render, what I want from the render, I want it to be more or less mellow, but not too mellow. Okay, I want it to be bright enough for me to work the magic in Photoshop. I'm gonna grab an add-on that is really cool, and it's called Photographer, and you guys should get it. Now where the hell is it? Alright, I need to click on the camera to get it activated here. Camera, okay. And now let's grab this add-on photographer. There we go. What I want to do here, right? I want to actually adjust exposure. So I'm going to pump the exposure up a little bit, okay? So let's increase the brightness of the whole scene a little bit. And let's see how we're gonna do. This is quite a new add-on to me, so I don't know where there is a histogram in here, but I wish there was a histogram because I really want to see the white and black data. So, you know, make sure that I'm not clipping anything. But that should be fine. So what I'm going to do now, I might actually add some depth of field, okay? So let's go back here and autofocus track, and let's track on this one. There we go, see? So now we are tracking, autofocus is on the lens because we want to focus on the eyes, okay? So I set the autofocus on the eyes, and let's think about f-stop. 2.8 is okay. What was our focal length again? 135. That's pretty decent. We can go 1.8 maybe. I mean, in reality, some of these parts of the bot at 2.8 would probably be fuzzy. We would need probably about 4 at least, maybe even 5.6 for this. But this is Blender, so I don't know how realistic that is. And we can just try and go ahead. I don't want these edges here to be completely sharp. I want them to be kind of like falling out of focus. That's what I want. So you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and render it. By the way, let me show you my render settings, okay? So first of all, in here in preferences, I used to have card and the CPU together, but I kind of unlinked them, and I think with this system I get a better performance with just the card selected. So make sure that, you know, when you're using a card, just select one of these or both. It really depends on the machine, okay? Then my samples, I'm just gonna go for, of course, cycles, and about, you know, let's try 250, should be enough. And let's see, performance, mine is set to 2048, 2048, but, you know, again, it depends on the system, right? And my light paths are set to these values, so 6, 4, 4, 4, 4. You need at least 4 if you're using decals. I got a lot of decals, okay, and this is like tons of decals, okay. These are all decals, right? These elements, for example, you know, these are all decals, okay. So you need at least 4, otherwise in cycles you're gonna get like nasty, dark, sort of noisy edges, okay. And then this is important, okay, compositor, you need to have it set it up. So click on use nodes, and you're gonna get these two popping up. Then you have to add denoise and glare. Glare is actually for like a it's like a glow, like an Eevee. You don't really need this in this scene because we don't have any lights, but reflections on the metal are gonna kind of be amplified, so I actually keep it in. And you do need to switch on the passes. They're here. You need to have the this one, the noising data, turned on, okay. So make sure that this is on, otherwise this compositor will not work. And then do not touch, you know, any of this garbage here. So the denoising hereby, do not check this on, because denoising is going to be done by compositor at the end of rendering, okay. So we are ready to render. Before, you know, I do anything, I'm just going to save it because Blender, and I'm just going to render it, and probably going to speed up the video because it might take, you know, a minute or two or so or something. Let me see how long it's gonna take. Okay, render is coming up, but let's talk about it. So there is only the one thing I don't like, okay. I don't like this triangle in here, this white space. It's gonna pull attention, and I don't want that. I'm gonna actually either move the floor or simply copy these decals one more time, so this is filled. The back is fine, that's beautiful. I like the transition. There's a nice transition here that doesn't bother me. I can fix this in Photoshop. The separation is pretty good, I don't mind that. This wall could be a little bit brighter, I think, would be better in my opinion, so we're gonna cancel this. Also, I think we are a little bit too high here. You see that? The feet are sinking into the floor, and these details you really need to pay attention to, okay. These are important. Let's go back to solid mode because just gonna take too long. I'm just gonna simply you know what, I'm just going to duplicate them and like this, and grab these and duplicate them on Y, and we should be Gucci. I'm just gonna duplicate them one more time to be on the safe side, and we're fine. Alright, so that's sorted. And now let's see. Oh, these ones are a little bit too far, right? So let me pick them and select these two. Move them a little bit deeper here. How is it now? It's better. A little bit more. So move it on the a little bit more. They overlap, but it's okay. They actually overlap too much now, I think. Yeah, it's fine. They kind of like, you know, sticking together. That's fine. Alright, that's perfect. And the next one was the floor was sinking, right? Now, the good thing is that the decals actually parented to the main plane. So GZ, I just drop it a little bit, you know. So you can see this contact shadow. See that here? I want to see that contact shadow kind of, you know, coming up, but so this is bad and this is bad, okay? This is good. You really have to be precise. These details, they make the image, okay? If you take care of the details, the big thing's gonna take care of themselves. So now let's crop this back wall, and I'm just gonna pump this a little bit higher, okay? Just a little bit higher. And we are in cycles. Right, so I'm just gonna save this and render it again. The exposure was fine, I think. I want something bright, but not too bright. So I can actually manipulate with contrast in Photoshop. But it can't be too bright because then I have no leeway to actually work with this image, okay? So this is more or less fine. Okay, second render coming in. Now, because we filled this space, now I feel that we have not enough background, that these tiles should go further. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the floor. So cancel it again, grab this floor, and GZ, actually GY is going to be better in this case, and move it just a little bit, you know, back, okay? So it's sort of, you can see the edge just moved backwards, right? That's I think this should be perfect. Let's go render, and again. Rendering, if you want to render something in one go, your portfolio will never look good, okay? It's just not gonna happen. Doesn't matter how professional you are. If you're a professional photographer, there's no such thing that you're gonna go out and take one picture, it's gonna be amazing, okay? It's just fucking myth. So don't believe in myth, okay? It's the fine-tuning. You just need to, when you're on a professional level, you know what to fine-tune because you see those things, okay? It doesn't mean that you don't fine-tune them. You can't set everything perfectly from scratch because you don't see it the way the camera sees it, okay? Because Cycles sees things differently than Viewport or Look Dev. So you need to have a render, or like at least a beginning of a render, to see how light works, how the exposure looks, how the floor reacts with the surface, how the reflections work, okay? What's the separation, how is my lines, and so on. So how's my angles, you know, how's my compression, how's my DOF, so depth of field, all that stuff, you know. I just need to see that, okay? I need to feel it. When everything is Gucci, we're good to go. See, now that looks much better. See, that's a balance. I like it. I could argue that, you know, I could push this edge a little bit, round it up, so this is a little bit more even. So this distance here would be even with this one, but this is not such a big deal, okay? This is not such a big deal. I like to see now the background is whiter, is brighter, so you see the separation. Now there's a lot of noise because the noiser hasn't kicked in yet. We have like a 1.5 minute left of the render, but it looks much better. The floor looks much better. Look at the contact shadows, they're beautiful, okay? There's a separation between the floor and the feet, and everything is peachy. That's peachy. I like it. I really like it. These shadows gonna be deep, that's normal. These shadows gonna be deep as well, but we get this bounce of the light. So this side is open, and that's a very big side. If you slice this model in half, right? So let's slice it in here. This is a very big part of the model. So if this part would be in shadow, okay? it wouldn't look good because it's very detailed. You want to see these details, okay? But this side cannot be brighter than this one, which is why I'm not putting a light on the right side. I'm putting a reflector, because reflector will never reflect more light than the main light, right? So this is going to be brighter, and that's what I want to be brighter, because these are eyes and a face. And people are always drawn to faces in photographs. A render is a photograph, right? Image. So we always drawn to faces in images. We always look for faces in images. And now this shape is immediately recognized as face, because eyes, mouth, nose, etc., right? So we're going to look at it. So this needs to be the brightest spot. Eyes need to be sharp, preferably both, but at least this one, so closest, the one that's closest to the camera. So these are the elements that are very important, you know. That's why I focus on this eye, not on this eye, because I'm working with a very shallow depth of field, 2.5, 2.8, right? Sorry, 2.8. And I'm slicing this object. The plane of focus, okay, will slice this object. It's gonna be parallel to the lens, okay? So it's gonna slice it like, you know, like a guillotine going down, okay? So probably the front of the feet might not be tack sharp, but they're gonna be sharpish. If I really wanted to, you know, like nail down the focus, I'll probably have to focus on something in here. So, because the way the focus works, okay, the plane of focus is gonna give you 1/3 of the distance before the point where you're focusing. So let's say we focus on the knee. So I'm gonna get 1/3 in front and 2/3 of the distance behind. And whenever you move this point of focus, the plane of focus is gonna move with it. So when you want eyes to be sharp, and you shoot with a very shallow depth of field, you might want to focus just a little bit before, but it really depends on the focal length, on a depth of field, so on aperture, and you know, well, other factors. So if you shoot with a camera, you know, there could be a camera shake and all that. It's not a problem in here because camera is still, but aperture and the focal length, the compression of the lens, right? All right. I'm gonna fast forward till the end of the render, and I'm gonna jump into Photoshop because I can see that this one is a good to go. I want to see one more thing because I actually haven't noticed what I was. Where is it? Output here. TIFF, good. So see, when I'm recording, when I'm rendering, this is important. I always get one of the, you know, highest quality file. Okay. There's one more that is actually better than that theoretically, but the EXR file, okay? But the problem is that when you're converting it into JPEG, you need to do actually a color conversion and all that, and it's just messing things up. So I don't do that. Now TIFF is, you know, as close as it comes to a raw file. It's not as good, but it's close, especially in 16-bit. You wanna render in 16-bit, not 8. 8-bit is a JPEG, it's a mess. Okay, you want the top quality, okay, because you wanna be editing this image. You're gonna be damaging pixels, and the more pixels you have and the better quality of tones you have, the better the end result's gonna be, okay? So do not render in JPEGs, okay? JPEGs are shit. These are just for this end product, okay? Not the meat you're gonna cook a stew with, okay? So now let's save this thing, and I'm gonna bring it to Photoshop, yeah? First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this thing, okay? Because I want to have some backup here that is untouched, just in case I want, you know, I have to fall back on something. Now, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my camera raw and check my levels, okay? My histogram. My histogram is it's not too bad. It's a lot of bright, kind of like a bright mid-tones. So right side is bright tones, left side is black, okay? Nothing is clipped, which is good, which means nothing is pure white, like this, which is great, and nothing is too dark, you know, like this, okay? I see a lot of renders like this. You can't do shit with this. It's just, that's it, you're done. I mean, it's just not enough light. You need to have light to work with something. But you can't have it too bright, because you're going to start losing details on this, you know, two reflective surfaces, because that thing is metal, right? So it's gonna reflect light. So if you want to bring it a little bit up, you need to drop the highlights, okay? See, drop the highlights a bit. But it's gonna, if you go too dark, too deep to the left, you're gonna make this image look muddy. So you don't want to push it. I'm gonna push the exposure just a maybe teensy winsy bit, and that's it. I'm going to open shadows just a little bit, but not too much, because I don't want to make it too dull, just a little bit, yeah. And what I'm gonna do actually is I'm going to grab the brush and I'm gonna brush it with clarity, but with clarity with lifted shadows, so it's not gonna be too dark. Don't make the brush too big, because I don't actually want to sharpen the noise, because there is noise for sure around here. I just want to sharpen the bot, but not anything that's outside of it. Okay, so I'm simply sharpening the bot, right? And now you can see that increasing the shadows actually does make a difference, right? I could even lift the blacks just a little bit, just a smidgen, maybe 0.3, maybe that's too much, maybe 0.2, something like this, and I'm okay. Let me show you the difference, okay? So let me turn this on. Look, see what I mean? It's already more separation. Now I'm gonna add curves, and I'm going to grab this handle, and let's see. I'm gonna make this one a little bit brighter. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go for this one here. Just make this one brighter. Let's remove them. Let's do it again. Just this one a little bit brighter, like that. And I'm gonna bring this one a little bit down. Not too much, just a little bit. And I'm gonna push this one a little bit higher. That's a little bit too much. Something like this, and bring this one just a little bit lower. And see how it goes. Now I'm going to change the blend mode to luminosity, so it doesn't affect any colors. We don't have many colors, but still. See that it brings a little bit, this bot a bit up. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna actually reverse it. So Control I, reverse the mask. I'm gonna grab a brush, okay. I'm gonna make it maybe the flow something like 39 or something. And I'm going to brush this effect onto the bot, okay. Normally I would use a pen tablet, but it's not installed yet on this computer. I need to get this done. I've been busy creating tutorials for you guys. No time for that. So now you see when I'm gonna turn it on and off. It's a little bit of an effect, but that's what I want. I'm actually gonna remove it from here, because I don't want it here. It's a bit too bright here, so remove it from there. Something like this. It's a new Photoshop, they moved everything again. Here, color lookup. We could play with these and start stacking effect, like for example, color lookup, stuff like a gradient and such. This one is really interesting. I don't like the color, but we could switch it to a luminosity, and we could just grab the contrast from it, See, that's pretty cool, isn't it? And then if you wanted to, you could change this one to blue and lift the introduce some blue tones in the shadows, make it a bit more blue. Then we need to actually go to RGB again and pump some brightness, because we are actually dulling it down. Or we could simply switch it to from normal to actually color, and this would introduce only color without affecting the brightness, you see. This illusion that it makes it a little bit darker, but there's just an illusion. We could actually remove the blue from the brighter tones, like this, introduce kind of like a cross process effect. But to be honest, you could just keep stuck in these effects, right? You could go, for example, for gradient map, and well, here we could select our own tones, so grab this color and go for like a, maybe even dark blue. And here we could go for something warmer, or maybe like a desaturated blue, or maybe something brighter. Let me see. Something like this maybe. And then we could change the blend mode to soft light. and reduce the fill-in opacity to something like this. You know, you can play a lot with it, okay? What I like to do, because this just takes too much time in fiddling, what I like to do is I like to use infinite color, and I'm usually picking something on the blue side, and then I'm working it, okay? So something like this would be good, and then it needs adjusting, okay, because it's a bit dull. So what I'll probably do is just, you know, go ahead here and start playing with the contrast, okay, and introduce some local contrast to my bot. That's a little bit too dark. I don't want to make it too dark. I want to make it contrasty, but not too dark, okay? Something like this, maybe. Let's see that. Change it to luminosity. Yeah, that's actually much better. That's kind of cool. I could, for example, go to one of my favorite plugins, which is Nick Collection. Let's go to Color Effects Pro, and we could go for the Pro Contrast, which is amazing. Let me actually make it smaller so you can see what I'm doing. Go here to, these are paid add-ons, guys, but as I said, I'm gonna show you how I would do it, because I don't give a shit if something costs money. If it just gets me the job done, that's what I'm gonna be using. Pro Contrast is really good. You can actually use it also to correct color cast, which you could actually remove a little bit of this color cast from the wall. It's actually pretty cool. And let me see. We don't want to push it too far, just a little bit. And let's accept it. Let's see how we're gonna look after that. That's pretty cool, but it's a little bit too strong, yeah. So let's just find like a golden middle. It looks pretty good. I think that the left side is a bit too bright in here. We didn't get a proper separation over there, so let's see. Yeah, so let's put a mask on it. And let's actually remove it from here. So let's grab a brush and let's just brush it off. Now you need to be precise with this, because if you're not, you could use something, for example, like pen tool, okay, to make a very specific selection. And let's see. Something like this, maybe. And then make a selection. Then we could delete this effect from here. So let me grab a mask and conceal it in here. So it's gonna be a, whoops, the other way around. There we go. Something like this. So it just brings back the separation over there. You see when I cover this, you see that? It's a little bit darker. I don't know if it's better or worse. I need to go with feather and see. Nah, maybe I'll leave it. You know what? I'm going to feather it a little bit. Something like this. That will do. At the end, probably I would slap some vignette on it, because you do want some vignetting around the image. So let's go to camera raw again. You could do it manually, but why bother? Effects and vignette. Just bring it in a little bit. I'm gonna fix the brownness here, so something like this. We can feather it, and let's play with the midpoint a bit. So let's bring it in, but not too in. Something like this, maybe. And it's a bit too strong, so we're gonna, you know, mellow it down. And of course, I want to remove it from the top, because that's where my head is, right? So I'm just gonna grab a black brush and sort of, you know, dab here. This part is okay to be darker, because we're not gonna be really going into here. Just kind of like a reference sort of bounce area. I'm gonna remove from here too, because I want to put text over there, and I don't want it to be too dark here. It's gonna be too heavy. Bottom dark is fine. So see, this is like sort of closing the image in, okay, very gently. I like this. I'm gonna reduce the opacity a little bit more. Let me turn off these layers here, because I don't want to copy them. Oh wait, I have no choice. There we go. Let's copy those three. and at the end I've just added text, you know, and text placement is not accidental too, right? Okay, you cannot just slap it anyway, all right? So it's the font, it's the size, it's everything that matters, okay? So you need to think about all these things. I think this font doesn't have numbers, so the font that I used, I think, was this one. I really like this font. So let's make it bigger. Now the size is also important. You cannot be too big because it's gonna overpower the model, okay? You know, this is really touch and feel, okay? Like here would be too high in my opinion because this place would be too open. Alright? So this would become irrelevant. I want to invade this space, but not too deep, because this is going to become a main feature. This is the main feature, you see? So it's all about balance, okay? If it's on the same height with eyes, in this case, this is not a good idea because it sort of creates a symmetry. But since this place is hollow, it's just looking too heavy for me. Something a bit above the eye line, somewhere here is perfect, and I could just drop some, you know, tiny text on the bottom. So Alt and move it down, and what was it? Pocket Spybot. And I'm gonna change font because this one is too aggressive. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through some fonts and see what we can find here. Let's see. You want something delicate, less invasive than the main text, something like this, but we would need to maybe something more sci-fi because this one's a bit boring. You don't want a soy boy font, you know what I mean? You want something decent. This one isn't bad actually. This one is cool. I like this one. Let's grab this. Okay, so let's Control T and let's make it smaller. All right, and we can actually with Shift we can make it narrower. See, like that. Change the properties of the font and make sure that the text is actually they're both even. Okay, this is important. They shouldn't be sticking out, or and that looks pretty cool. You see that the main one is a bit too strong, so I'm gonna drop it a bit down because it's a bit too, you know, something like this. So it's there, it's pulling your eyes, but it's not the main feature. If it's pure black, it's gonna pull too much attention, it's gonna anchor your eyes. We want eyes to glow through it and go back to it, okay? And Sig, what I would do usually is I would just put it on the bottom, okay, somewhere here. It really depends. So let me point to the right, and then let's hang on a second. Let me grab white color here, and Sig should be really, you know, delicate. Okay, something like that. You should be able to see it, but not notice it immediately. Okay, because that's like the last feature of the you know, watermarks and stuff. I fucking hate it because they're just too invasive. Okay, they ruin the whole image. Though if you want to put a watermark, it really needs to be delicate, and in my opinion it needs to fit the image, okay, the composition, so it fits perfectly in the style. You see, it's pretty cool. It's aligned with the text on the top, so the eye is gonna now bounce, you know, between all these elements. And this, in my opinion, is a nice image. Now you could put some additional text in here if you wanted to, some, for example, bot specs or whatever, like some kind of a company name, like, you know, in this area. You know, something like Botronics or whatever, and it would be cool, but this one is fine as well. Okay, so we have a lot of negative space here, but it's nice because it gives this guy a place to breathe. Okay, it makes him look like it's, you know, he's important. Okay, because it sort of pulls the attention with the contrast, with the clarity, with the sharpness. Okay, it just pulls the eyes immediately. Okay, it's much more sharp than the floor, than anything in the image. There's no distractions. I could put some, you know, stuff in the background, but it depends. It depends what you're creating this image for. Okay, let's say you are creating an ad for a company that makes these things. Okay, this would be a good ad because it's clean. Okay, it's pristine, right? It's just neat. You don't want to clutter. Besides, this robot has a lot of details. Okay, this is like almost pushing it. because in my opinion it's not overdone, but few more things it would be, okay? So you do not want to create a noisy background for something that it's already noisy, okay? There's a lot of, this thing is already loud, because there's a lot of data for the brain to process when you look at it, okay? There's a lot of details, a lot of points you need to jump from and to. So brain needs some areas to relax, otherwise the image is gonna get rejected by the brain, okay? So this is really important. Everything needs to be in sync. The object, the background, the text, the size of the text, the reflections, the colors, everything, okay? It's really important. And in this case, everything is gray, except for these blue accents on the lens and the sides, right? But most of it is gray. So there's no other way to pull attention than with details or contrast and sharpness, okay? Because there's no saturation. I mean, there's saturation, but there's no color, as in red, blue, you know, vivid colors, right? That, you know, we immediately are drawn to. They're just gray scale colors, right? Most of them. And blue is cold color as well, so it will not pull you in. If it was red, it would be too strong. Because it's blue, it sort of melts with the environment, because it's also cyan on the cyan side, right? So all these things are important. Nothing in this image is accidental, okay? If you have happy accidents, means you're not there yet. You can't have happy accidents. Everything has to be planned, and that is how you render stuff, okay? Hope you guys enjoyed the vid. Hope you learned something interesting. Give us a like and sub if you did, and I'll talk to you in the next one.